Well, guys, a lot of things go rotten in 20 years, like food and like movies in a lot of ways. I'm going to take a look at Independence Day Resurgence from 2016. 29% on the tomato meter, 30% on the audience score. Yep, 20 years since the original Independence Day, and the original is not rotten. The original has actually aged quite well, whereas this is universally agreed to be completely rotten. That 30% audience score, it only has 75,000 audience reviews. That's more than it probably should have. I think this movie has almost been completely forgotten considering how big of a budget it was, the reputation it had from the first one, and yet today in 2020 it's largely forgotten about, and for very good reason. I'm not sure what happened here. This was directed by the same director that did the first one, Roland Emmerich. Roland Emmerich failed in two big ways, in my opinion. First of all, he failed in the visual effect department. Some of the visual effects in this film, right in the opening scenes, not only do they not need to be there, they are unnecessary, but they look very bad. In fact, there are shots in which what should just be normal military helicopters, they actually resemble cardboard cutouts that are very shiny and two-dimensional and made to look like they're 3D helicopters, and it's very, very off-putting. Very bad CGI in the very beginning of this, and I'm not talking about on alien ships. I'm talking about on just, for example, on Marine One. The Marine One helicopter that's shown flying along I guess it's the Mall of Washington, D.C. It's in the opening of the movie, and right away it's really bad. It looks like some amateur filmmaker made it. It does not look like Roland Emmerich had anything to do with it, because if you go back to 2012 or what is it, The Day After Tomorrow, those had the same type of end of the world disaster effects in it, and they didn't look this bad. There are also fails on the CGI on the alien ships and etc. And they're a little bit more nitpicky fails because we are looking at something that's not real. But a lot of things in this were made, they are portrayed by CGI, and they didn't have to be. Roland Emmerich, he could have used real helicopters. He could have used real vehicles like he has done in other movies so that he didn't have to use CGI. But nope. CGI was used for all kinds of stuff in this that it shouldn't have been used for, and it's just done poorly on top of it. So in the very opening scene of Resurgence, you're just like, wow, you're cringing at how bad the CGI looks. I had to rewind it a couple of times to make sure it wasn't just a problem with my eyes or a problem with, something about the format I was watching it in, because I was watching this on one of the HBO channels, so I thought maybe they did something to maybe their version of this, there was something off about it, but nope, it's just flat out like this in the movie, and it's just like half finished or half baked CGI, and I'm not talking, it's not in places where you needed CGI. It's in places where, for some reason, Roland Emmerich just wanted to be cheap, and he thought it would be cheaper to make cartoon versions of helicopters rather than just using a helicopter. Yeah, it's something else. That's the first thing he failed on, and then the second thing he failed on is in the first 1996 film, Independence Day. Yeah, you can nitpick it. It has a lot of cheesy stuff in it, and it's still a very enjoyable film because it's fun. The entire movie is just a fun experience. It's a ride. It's literally like a theme park ride from front to back. It was, and I saw it in the theater in 1996. I probably saw it two, or I might have seen this three times in the theater, as a matter of fact. That's how good it was. That's how popular it was back in the day. And I've seen it many times on DVD. I've seen it on cable. I've seen it on Blu-ray. It's just a fun experience. And yes, it's campy, and yes, it's over the top, and yes, it has cheesy stuff and comedy throughout, and it works for exactly those reasons, and primarily it's just a very fun movie. This one, all the fun is gone. All the fun is gone. This is completely sober, completely serious, trying to be some kind of horror type alien invasion experience, and it's just like, it's very depressing, it's very boring, and all the fun is gone. And even though it features a lot of the same type of humor, the same type of almost copycatted situations as the first one had, it doesn't work because all the film is gone. It's just like you're watching this going, wow, this is the most expensive, unfunny version of Independence Day that could have been made. And it's coming from the same director, although it doesn't feel like it is. It feels like somebody else directed this and that they just didn't understand what made the first movie good. And that's why I say it's, one of two fatal flaws from Roland Emmerich, because Roland Emmerich understood that the first one was fun, and that's why it was a smashing success. All of a sudden, the same director, 20 years goes by, and not only does he forget how to do CGI, he clearly knew how to do it in 2012. But in this one, not only does he fail on the CGI, but he forgets that, Independence Day is supposed to be a fun theme park type movie. And he tries to make it into something else. I don't know what was going on in his head. Did he lose his mind at some point? I don't know. It's a complete fail, and that's the biggest problem for me. Yes, I'm going to nitpick other things, but I just say it just fails on the CGI, and it fails even more so, it fails on the fun factor. There's nothing fun or amusing or laugh out loud, but it's just as cringeworthy. It's still just as campy and cheesy, but it just doesn't work with all that stuff there. So let's take a look. Well, first let's get a gander at the original Independence Day. And what do you see? What do you see right there? You see two characters. You see one that does appear in the second film. In the first film, Will Smith's girlfriend was an exotic dancer. And in this film, 20 years later, she's older and she's a nurse in a hospital. Okay, quite believable. She could have easily become a nurse in 20 years. Nothing wrong with that. But she's very minorly featured in this. In fact, she just disappears after one or two scenes in this film. She just disappears, so she's just a callback cameo, so to speak. And then the big fail of this movie, Will Smith. Will Smith made the first one fun. He's right there front and center. This 1996 Independence Day was a Will Smith vehicle. It always has been. It always will be considered as such. And yet in this one, no Will Smith. He decided not to participate. And so the only thing that called back to Will Smith in this was that they had a picture of him in an Air Force or a pilot's, I don't know if he was Navy or Air Force, but he was in his uniform and he was in a photograph up on a wall, and that was his only appearance in this. And this film replaced him with two characters. It replaced him with his fighter pilot son character, played by somebody I don't know, the actor, and it replaced him also with I believe he's one of the Helmsworth brothers. I call him, younger Thor, or I don't know, it's more like Thor's washed up brother, so to speak. In any case, Will Smith's character was replaced by two actors, and neither one of them was capable of replacing him. In any case, let's take a look at the audience reviews. Let's see what else I'm forgetting about. We have one from 2 days ago. This is January of 2020. 1 star, worst movie I've ever seen. Let's continue on. 1 star, just simply terrible. 2.5 stars, not English. 1 star, very, very, very bad movie. I'm not going to entertain 3 and 4 star reviews. There's no point. 0.5 star, November 8th. I pray the real aliens come and kill us all if anyone even remotely thinks of making a sequel to this. Well, unfortunately, I've heard rumors that this is only supposed to be the second out of 3 movies. I hope that doesn't happen. I really hope that doesn't happen. But there's a plot line in this about another alien out there, another alien civilization that has come to help us. They're enemies of the ones that attacked us in '96. And it kind of leads you to believe that this storyline is supposed to continue into another movie. But really, I hope it doesn't, because I'm going to say this is like a 1 star movie. I wouldn't say 0.5 star. I'm going to give this a full star because there is a lot of spectacle to look at. Even though it doesn't work, it's not fun. It's interesting to look at. I mean, I sat through the whole thing, so I'll consider that. Yeah, it deserves 1 star and no more than 1 star. 0.5 star is completely fine by me, but I'll give it that little extra bit because it's still so expensive. A lot of the visuals do work. I mean, yes, there's really bad, cheap CGI in places, but it's kind of got enough spectacle to keep you watching a little bit. Half a star, November 6th. This movie was a complete piece of crap. A middle-aged, stripped, suddenly becomes oh, they're referring to Will Smith's girlfriend character. A middle-aged stripper suddenly becomes a doctor, haha. Not really suddenly, I mean, it's been 20 years, so I don't agree with you on that. The love story part was an absolute joke. This script should have been called Toilet Paper. The head of the Queen alien was completely ripped off from a movie called Pumpkinhead. When did the aliens grow mouths with fangs? In the first movie, they didn't ever have mouths. If you ever get close enough to the director of this abortion, then throw flaming bags of shit at him. Yeah, I'll agree. I don't understand what happened with Roland Emmerich on this. He had such a winning formula in the first one. Why, even if he had just copied what he had done in the first one, he would have been a success with this one. I don't know. This should have been a slam dunk. I don't know what the hell he was doing here, but he screwed up. It's all him. It's all him. Nobody else to blame but him. I don't think I would, throw flaming bags of shit at him. He's not worth all that. There are some people that are worth that, but I don't think he is. He's got good movies out there. I mean, for action disaster type movies, that are far better quality than this in a lot of different ways. But yes, I'll agree with this reviewer. The alien queen's head, it did look like Pumpkinhead from the old horror movie. Very much so. I was thinking that too. I didn't think that was a flaw. I mean, sooner or later, a movie's going to accidentally look like Pumpkinhead, but yeah, it did. Let's take a look at my list here. I've mentioned the CGI vehicles that look like cardboard cutouts that were completely unnecessary. It didn't have to be there. Yeah, there's a big problem with the plot. A very big plot hole that you can drive a huge alien spaceship through. After the first movie ended, all the alien ships crashed down to the Earth. They went up in balls of flame, so to speak, except for one ship that landed. It actually landed on the surface and wasn't destroyed after the final battle. And in the film, this is in an African country where an African warlord has controlled this country for at least a generation. And for some reason, the U.S. just didn't care about this gigantic ship sitting in this African country. And it's shown in this movie that Jeff Goldblum's character, he's supposedly an expert on the alien technology. Even after 20 years in this movie, when this movie opens, he is just suddenly getting access to this ship that's been sitting there in Africa for 20 years. And the U.S. government and other governments around the world have just ignored this ship that's been sitting there for 20 years. I guess they're just not interested in alien technology all of a sudden. It makes absolutely no sense. And this whole African warlord plot is ridiculous. This African warlord, leader of this country, not only is he does he have exclusive access to this gigantic city-sized ship that's sitting parked untouched, undamaged in his African country, but he's also managed to get into the armory of the ship and arm his soldiers with the aliens' weapons, and he's also managed to decipher the aliens' symbol language, and he knows how to read their writing. Wow, wow, wow. But the biggest fail, of course, is just that the U.S. government would just say, yeah, the alien ship is in this African country. We have to respect their borders, so we're just going to leave it there alone. We don't care about it. Yeah, that's going to happen. That's the biggest fail in this plot-wise. There's a lot of other small nitpicks, but that's the biggest thing. And again, I say, what was Roland Emmerich thinking? Because he's not that dumb. He really isn't. He has a lot of movies that have a lot of dumb stuff in them, but nothing as dumb as that. Nothing that just so completely blows everything plot-wise out of the water. I mean, what was he thinking? Was he high? Was he actually high or something when he wrote this? I just don't know what to think, because that, again, this is him. This is Roland Emmerich failing even in a way that Roland Emmerich of 20 years before would have never done something like this. I don't get it. 1.5 stars. Easily Roland Emmerich's worst movie since 1998's Godzilla. Without Will Smith's charisma, the other characters are unable to hold this cliche story together. 3 out of 10. Yeah, I agree. 1998's Godzilla, it was bad, But yeah, this one's worse because of, the big, huge plot problems. That alien ship's just sitting there for 20 years, really. And then it's only like right at the opening of this movie, 20 years later, that even one character decides to come from America to look inside the ship. Really? Um, Come on now. Godzilla from '98 wasn't that bad. I mean, even gigantic monsters fighting each other from out of the sea, even if they're wearing rubber suits, the logic is not as bad as that. So come on now. Half a star, August 24, 2019. One of the worst movies in history, and I loved the first one. WTF happened here? Pure shit. Yeah, what happened, Roland Emmerich? What happened? One star, unnecessary sequel to a good movie. Will Smith made a great decision not to be associated with this dumpster fire. Yeah, if it was Will Smith himself, if he actually looked at this script and then that's why he passed, congratulations, he's pretty damn smart. He was able to see what was going to happen. If he had been associated with this and it had been still the same script and everything, wow, it would have been an embarrassment for him. So yeah, either he figured it out or his agent or somebody talked him out of this, and bravo to them. Half a star. Holy crap, Independence Day Resurgence is the wasteland of Hollywood. If Sleepless was worse, you're wrong. Independence Day Resurgence is the shittiest movie of the Independence Day universe. I walked out of the theater angry. I was pissed. Even my friends agree that this movie is shit. The CGI is shit. The cast is rubbish, except for Jeff Goldblum. He's alright. But the rest of the cast, it's an abomination. Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, I want to I want to give you my sincere and severe, both of those. I want to give you severely sincere condolences if you had to watch this in the theater, because um, if you were in certain places, you probably could have gotten your money back. In certain countries, you're entitled to your money back if you demand it. In the U.S., well, you take your chance with whatever cinema you went into, and I don't know. I'm glad I only saw this like when it was 2 years old on DVD. I didn't have to pay for it either. Somebody else did. They got it from Redbox, and I'm so happy I didn't have to pay for it. Half a star, July 6, 2019. Killing off Will Smith's character was a bad decision. The movie didn't have a likable enough person to root for. I'm sorry, but that's not what happened. They didn't kill off Will Smith's character. Will Smith decided not to be in this. But yes, it was a mistake that they tried to replace him with two other actors that not only didn't work well together, but they didn't work well individually. But it was I guess the point was, if they couldn't get Will Smith, replace him with two different characters, and both of those characters, I don't know the character that played Will Smith's son. I've never seen him in anything else. At least I don't recall seeing him, and he was very off-putting. When I saw him show up and try to be a military character, it felt like it was like some flamboyant character that should be like in some Broadway musical trying to play Will Smith's character. That's the way the acting struck me. It felt very cringy. And as far as the younger uh, Australian brother of Thor. I can never pronounce their names properly, and I don't care to. In any case, I really like Chris Hemsworth, and I really like his Thor. And, just having his younger brother in this was a big fail. His younger brother is just like, there's nothing to him. He couldn't have saved anything in this movie, even if he had put in his best performance. He's just not all that. I don't know. I just thought his character was largely unlikable because his character was just a screw up, a military screw up in every way that had no business even being in the uniform he was in. And he was just an embarrassment. And to me, he was very unlikable, even if he wasn't played by Discount Thor. So let's move on. 3 stars, was good up to the last 5 minutes. I'm not sure what movie you were watching. It wasn't this one. 1 star, July 2nd, 2019. What a wasted effort. 1.5 star, horrible action movie. Only have good CGI. Well, yes, some of the CGI was okay, but by Roland Emmerich's standards, it was all pretty boring and bland, and the CGI at the beginning of this movie was just god awful bad. Like I said, I had to rewind this a couple of times to make sure my eyes weren't seeing it wrong. June 26, 2019. No, I read that one. June 9th, 2019, 3 stars. Could have been better, could have been worse, visually stunning. Well, if you want to see a gigantic 3,000 mile wide spaceship land on top of the surface of the Earth, even though the CGI showing that wasn't bad, it was up to industry standards. It just didn't look real because it's just ridiculous on its face. So it's something Roland Emmerich would do, but it just doesn't look believable, and the gravity effects and etc. they conveniently turn on and off when the plot needs them to, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And yeah, it's not fun at all. You would think it would be. Does it sound like fun to see a 3,000 mile wide spaceship try to land on the Earth? Well, on the surface, when I say it like that, it does sound like something that would be fun to witness, but it's not. It's not horrifying either, despite the tone of the film. You know, the tone of the film is like more like a serious alien invasion horror film, and it's not even scary on top of that. Let's see, plot problems. Yeah, you know, when the aliens first show up, when the aliens come back, as it were, you know what's shown in the film? It's part of the plot that when the aliens detect that, or excuse me, when the U.S. military has detected that the aliens have returned to our solar system and they are approaching the Earth, you know what the military does? They say, well, yeah, we see them coming, but it doesn't matter. We have this big party celebration of the 20-year anniversary of the defeat of the aliens to put on. And then after we're concluded with that celebration, then we'll get back to the alien invasion. Literally. That's what the top general says in this movie. And the female president goes right along with this plan. Everybody just says, well, yes, the aliens are back. And in fact, there's new aliens are back too on top of that. But nah, we don't have time right now. We've got this big celebration on the Capitol in Washington, D.C. on the mall. And this just has to go off because it's the 20th anniversary of the 96 events. And then after that, we'll get back to the alien stuff. Wow. Wow. Wow and wow. Like, that's a problem, and that's, you know, that's the way this movie goes. Pretty bad, pretty bad. 3 stars. I watched this a lot, but it isn't anywhere near the original. Better casting would have helped, and little more to the story. No, better casting would not have helped. There were so many problems that Roland Emmerich himself put into this from the beginning and just carried throughout the whole movie. I don't care who you put in this, they couldn't have saved this thing. And they had everybody back from the first movie playing their same characters pretty much like they did, with the exception of Will Smith. He wasn't there. But that wasn't enough. They did exactly what they did in the first film in a lot of the same copycat ways they did in the first film, but this film wasn't fun. It didn't have the right pace either. It was too long and slow at parts. And because it wasn't fun, it didn't matter if even some of the comedy would have worked. It just felt like it was going through the motions, and it was disappointing. And yeah, you're checking your watch to find out just how much running time has gone on. The first one was so fast-paced and fun. The whole thing went by, and you left the theater going, wow, I didn't realize I sat there the whole time, because you were just swept up in it. And this one, it's just like you're checking your watch, most of it. 1.5 stars, May 2nd, 2019. This is the worst sequel I've ever seen. Oh, yeah, I'll agree with that. Off the top of my head, in modern days, yeah, this is probably the worst sequel that I've seen too. 2.5 stars, April 25, 2019. Full of been there, done that moments. Independence Day wants to keep us looking by reminding us about the movie that preceded it without hiding its urgency to create a new saga. Yeah, there's a lot of callbacks and remember this and remember that and remember what I did in this previous film. But none of it's fun anymore. None of it's exciting. It's just like it reminds you how much better the first one was and makes this one worse, ironically. And it's sad that somebody like Roland Emmerich can't see what he's doing wrong. It stuns me that he did this. Yeah, and then there's problems with the plot where, you know, discount Thor. this military character that's unlikable because he's a fuck up and a screw off and a big mouth, and he's like every bad thing that you would want. He's like the most unlikable military hero, so to speak. He should have been like discharged long ago, and the movie shows you that he should have been, because this guy just keeps stealing, unauthorized stealing spacecraft and stealing aircraft, and he keeps getting away with it, and it's no big deal. He's insubordinate. He won't follow orders. He's stealing aircraft, and they're very easy to steal. Like, he steals an actual spaceship from a lunar base and flies it to Earth. He did this before in the movie, and he was put on some temporary suspension. He does it again in this film, and there's no security. He can just steal whatever he wants, and nobody comes to stop him or investigate, nobody to intercept him. He can just fly wherever he wants on the Earth and do whatever he wants. And when he gets back, nobody even cares. It's like not even a problem. His commanding officer is just going to yell at him and send him to his quarters like a kid's been sent to his room. It makes no sense. This guy should have been starting the movie already inside a military prison. But nope, it's no big deal. And it's so easy to steal spacecraft. It's so easy. All you have to do is just pick one out, and there's nobody to stop you. You can just fire it up and fly it out of the hangar and just take off, and they don't even send anybody after you. It's real convenient like that. No security on any flight line at all. A kid could have stole a spaceship if he felt like it. Hell, the janitor or somebody could have just decided to take off on his lunch break. Makes no sense. 2 stars, April 8, 2019. Like a bad version of the first one. Didn't we already watch this movie before? Yeah, it's just going through the motions of the first one. More expensive, with a couple of extra characters to replace Will Smith. No fun involved. More running time. And yeah, if you saw this in the theater, wow, I feel very sorry about that. But again, you really should fire off an email to Roland Emmerich if he gets emails, I don't know, and just maybe let him know that you were traumatized by this, and let him know. Don't let him forget, because he's old now, so make sure he doesn't forget this one. Half a star, March 11, 2019. If I'd never seen another film in my life, this would be worth 6 out of 10. However, I have. The fact that this was the most horrible pastiche of the original film, The Day After Tomorrow, Star Wars, and many others really annoyed me. I just spent the entire film saying, oh, for fuck's sakes. Yeah, you know why it reminds me of a lot of Roland Emmerich's other stuff? Because he loves to do like, he loves to set up situations where when his buildings and stuff are collapsing, you're in some kind of vehicle where you fly really low to just go under the buildings and around them to witness the spectacle from an aerial viewpoint. And he does this several times in the film 2012. He does it in the film Day After Tomorrow, and he does it in this one too. And you know, it's sad because the CGI of like the disaster happened in the, like this gigantic spaceship shows up and it's got its own gravity and it's sucking cars and parts of buildings up into the air. And all the CGI that's there, it actually looks of a lower quality than the CGI that was in the movie 2012. And I'm not saying the movie 2012 had the most fantastic CGI in the world, but it was up to industry standards and it wasn't off-putting and it looked good despite, how stupid it might have been. It looked fantastic. The CGI in this, it looks of a lower quality, noticeably lower quality in every way to that 2009 film. Again, it's the same director, so how did he fuck this up? How did he fuck this up? It's like, what was he thinking? How did this happen? There's a story there somewhere. I don't get it. 1 star. This is one movie I'm so glad I didn't waste my money seeing at the cinema. The first movie at least had some engaging characters, a clear storyline, and great special effects. The sequel is an unmitigated mess, poorly scripted, poorly edited, desperately trying to impress with CGI but failing miserably. A disastrous movie as opposed to a disaster movie. Move along now. This is one car crash you really don't want to see. Yeah, it's like a disaster movie that's the worst of all of them. I highly recommend 2012 over this, and that's not saying much, but yeah, 2012 is a rotten film on Rotten Tomatoes, but way more enjoyable than this in almost every way. 1.5 stars. Independence Day Resurgence is pretty much Independence Day with the word resurgence added onto it to make it sound new, when in reality it is this pretty much a repeat of its predecessor but with a less convincing cast. Yeah, the cast is a little bit worse. There's two characters we didn't need. But like I said, if you put Will Smith in this, it would not have fixed anything. It just would have made Will Smith really embarrassed. It would have dragged him down. It would not have improved anything. Roland Emmerich fucked this up so bad that nobody could have fixed this. Uh, yeah, the stupid physics, the physics of the alien ship, like they work one way when the plot needs it to, they work another when the plot needs it to. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a gigantic alien boss battle at the end. Yeah, the head of the alien queen looks like the creature from Pumpkinhead, and it's really stupid the way they defeat the alien queen. It's the worst of the worst boss battles you could imagine out of a video game, but I didn't even put it on my list of critique points because the rest of the movie is so bad, it's just not even necessary. It's It'll be a wonder if somebody goes into this and even gets to the part at the end with the alien boss battle, because it's likely they would have shut this off far ahead of that. That's why I didn't even bother to bring it up. But I'll just say, if you make it to the end, expect the alien boss battle that's completely stupid in every logical way, but it has to happen because Roland Emmerich just had to outdo himself somehow, and he just couldn't think of anything else. After he put the 3,000-mile wide spaceship, the only thing left to do was the alien queen, ripped off from Aliens with a pumpkin head, and just make it like 10 stories tall. Yeah. Boy, oh boy. 2 stars. Eh. The sad part is that the movie had some good ideas. The first movie partly worked because it was a product of its time. This movie tried to be a 90s movie in a 21st century world. I was hoping for something more mature. I kind of agree and disagree. Yeah, this felt like a 90s movie, but that's not its failing. This would have all worked if it was fun, if the humor had all worked, if it was exciting and fun, and it could have still been campy, and it still could have been illogical. That wasn't the problem. It's just that there's no fun to be found in this. The mood of it is just serious and dark and depressing, and the characters aren't fun. The characters are like bad versions of themselves. Like Bill Pullman returns, and he's like a broken, sad version of himself. Dr. Oaken returns, and he's just a more unlikable version of himself. The general, the general that was played very well, in my opinion, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 4-star general. Um, he, Robert Loggia, played him. Yeah, he returned as a slight cameo because I think he died either right before or after this film was made, and he just showed up in a wheelchair, and it looked like maybe they just put his face in the wheelchair because at that point he couldn't physically play the role. He just shows up, and he's a broken, sad version of himself too. And everybody's a sad version of himself, like the only character that's the same, the only character that's doing the same portrayal, the same humor, and is not like a broken shell of themselves, is Jeff Goldblum's character. Jeff Goldblum's character is a carbon copy of his performance from the first movie. It's not good or bad. He's just straight up doing what he did before. He's doing it very well. But unfortunately, every other character is a sad, broken mess of themselves, and it's just like the whole tone of the film is down and it's dark, and there's nothing fun about it or lively. And even Judd Hirsch's character, he's playing the same character too, but he's a broken, pathetic version of himself too, and a failed writer and all this other stuff that's going on. It's just not fun, and all the fun is gone. But let's move on. Half a star, January 11, 2019. Definitely the worst movie of 2016. I'll agree with that because no, there are other bad films of 2016. I've just recently done episodes on these. But it is the worst, I think, because it's the one that should have been the slam dunk. It's the one that had the biggest name. It's the one that had the director that had all this dialed in, you would think, because it was his film the first time in '96. And it's the worst. So I'd say, yeah, I agree. One star. May Whitman need to say more. This shows that casting was a sign of the real quality of the movie. Yeah, they're, the president, the female president in this, she's actually, she was the wife of the president in the first one. And I don't even know if I needed to mention that. It wouldn't matter if she was or not. She just doesn't do anything with this film. She's just as dumb as everybody else in the film, and for a president, she has to make dumb decisions to make the plot work, just like the military in this has to do the same thing. I didn't find her performance was bad. I just thought it's just a callback to the first one, and it's not impossible that she could be president. After all, we almost had that situation happen during the 2016 election, didn't we? And maybe that was Roland Emmerich's kind of nod to Bill and Hillary Clinton, maybe putting the wife of the former president as the president. I mean, if you think about it, in 96, Bill Clinton was president, and the wife was there, Hillary. And then in 2016, maybe Roland Emmerich, he thought for sure, just like all the other Hollywood people thought for sure, that they would get their Queen Hillary as president. And so he thought it would match modern politics, and you would have, the president's wife being president now in 2016. And I think that's what happened. And it just shows you that Roland Emmerich, like a lot of people in Hollywood, they're just unable to disconnect their political leanings from films. But that's certainly the least of this movie's problems, so let's move on. December 30, 2018, half a star, the worst movie I've ever seen. Here's one, December 17, 2018, half a star. Excellent piece of excellent piece of cinema, surpassing its predecessor by miles. The final fight with the alien queen thing was spectacular, and anyone who says otherwise is just wrong. Fight me. That's sarcasm because they gave it half a star. So sarcastically, I agree with you. 3 stars, November 18, 2018. I am a huge fan of the first Independence Day movie. The opening scene of that movie was one of my favorites of all time, but we are talking about this movie. The opening scene wasn't as good, but it was still chilling and showed that this could really be happening anywhere. Still, nonetheless, I had fun with this movie, even though it is lesser than the first installment. I definitely enjoyed this movie more than the majority, hence the outlier rating. I don't know, something about it drew me in. Okay, so this guy's saying, or girl, it doesn't specify on the reviewer. This reviewer is saying that they know that nobody else likes this, but for some weird reason they do, and they can't explain why. Okay, it's too bad you can't explain why, because that would be interesting. 2 stars, October 26, 2018. As someone who loves the first one, I just found this to be a boring and dull mess. I agree. 2 stars, October 12, 2018. Awful film, pointless storyline. Felt that they were forced to make a sequel for the sake of it. Yeah, I don't go along with that. I don't think anybody forced Roland Emmerich to do a sequel. I think he wanted to, and he had some weird plan, like maybe he thought he was going to outdo himself, but somewhere along the way he lost his total perspective on what made the first one fun. But he thought this would be something, apparently, because it wasn't a cash grab at all. He put a lot of effort into this. It just completely abandoned all the fun stuff from the first one. It's like he lost his mind, but he still wanted to produce a great product. But those two things, like insanity and producing a good product, aren't really things that go together, right? So I'll have to say this was a serious attempt by Roland Emmerich, and it's just a complete failure. I don't have anything else to add. Watch it for yourself, and don't pay money for it, or you'll be angry. I saw it for free, and I don't want to see it again. 30% on the audience score. It could be 20% on the audience score. It would still feel fair to me. Critics, that feels right. There's probably 29% of them that at least liked the CGI in some of the scenes. So in any case, I will let you go, and I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.